This is a Power 98.7 podcast. Now we're talking. Subscribe to Power 98.7 podcasts in iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. There's more on power987.co.za.
We will be speaking to, in a short while, to Sipho Zala Kanza, who's the co-founder of Sipho A. Kanza Foundation. The Breaking Down Borders Africa Youth Summit, a Pan-African annual conference for youth leaders from across the continent, is going to be hosted from the 22nd to the 24th of May 2019. The summit will be hosted under the theme Reclaiming Africa. So the 3-day gathering encourages youth participation in governance, social change, and the economy through topics that impart knowledge, engage thought, and inspire action. Delegates of the summit range from young leaders from diverse backgrounds such as media, politics, academia, and business, with an aim of driving inter-county relations and collaborations. So our guest today is Sophie. Earlier on, I think I said Sipho. Sophie Zala Kanza, the co-founder of Sophie A. Kanza Foundation, founded by Sophie and Louise Kanza, a passionate Pan-African change agent, peace activist, social entrepreneur, and leader. Proudly DRC, living in South Africa since the age of 3. Going to be talking to us just after this. And also joining us in this conversation, Lesego Musikare, who is the president of the United Nations Foundation Girl Up Club South Africa and a goalkeeper for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Good morning, Lesego. How are you?
Good morning. I'm good, thanks. And how are you?
I am good, and thank you very much for taking this time to talk to us. And maybe just talking to us about your involvement, firstly, as a goalkeeper for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Do you play soccer?
No, not at all.
Just needed to clear that whole goalkeeper thing out of the line.
No, it's not like a kind of
not Itumele Nkune vibes, ne?
No, not at all.
So goals, as in like keeping the goals. Just tell us about what you do, what your role as a goalkeeper in that regard means.
So basically what it is that we do as goalkeepers, and actually Sophie Kanza is a goalkeeper as well. What we do as goalkeepers is we were selected by the Bill and Melinda Foundation as people who basically represent what it is to sustain the development goals, firstly, that were placed by the UN as the 2030 agenda. No. And the 2030 agenda is basically a call to action to all citizens, to all politicians, to all corporations to basically say we want to end poverty by 2030. And this is not a UN thing. This is not a philanthropy thing. It's a citizenship thing. It's a corporations thing. Everybody needs to partake. And hence 17 sustainable development goals were put down. And in every country in Africa, there are, in most countries, let me say, there are representatives that are selected by the Bill and Melinda Foundation to represent these sustainable development goals.
All right. Fantastic stuff. Let's take this opportunity also to welcome in the studio Sophie Kanza. Bonjour Sophie.
Bonjour, comment ça va?
Ça va bien, merci.
Ça va bien, merci.
Merci beaucoup. Enchanté de faire votre connaissance.
Merci pareillement.
Okay. Now that we got that weird fake French from me out of the way. Are you well, Sophie?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
I am good. So you're also a goalkeeper?
Yes, I am.
Yeah. Tell us about your role. I mean, just adding up on what Lesego was talking about this time around.
Yeah, I think for me, the biggest thing is to amplify the voices of youth migrants, asylum seekers, and refugees in Southern Africa for now, and then take that continental as my activism grows.
Talk to us then about the Breaking Down Borders Africa Youth Summit. It will be taking place from the 22nd of this month. under the theme Reclaim Africa. I mean, it's quite a big and a big task to try and reclaim Africa, especially when we're talking about it from a youth perspective. I mean, just give us a little bit more background about the summit and the expectations thereof.
So it's a truly Pan-African space where we'll have over 18 countries in attendance. We're hoping to go for more, but the target is 18 different African states, as well as representatives from the diaspora.
Mm-hmm.
So it's also an intergenerational space where we'll have youth and, the ones that are not so youthful, but young at heart. And it's really a space...
Why are you hating on old people? Why are you being an ageist, Sophie?
No hate.
Why are you hating on us, older people? Yeah.
No hate. Yeah, so it's really a space for us to be able to work on solutions.
Mm-hmm.
We hear problems all the time, but to work on solutions as well. Under three main topics, which is people, power, and potential.
Mm-hmm.
So speakers are coming from all over the continent and all over the country. And what I really like is that they've given youth the opportunity to host sessions, to host workshops, to be speakers, and really to share the knowledge and, to keep it on the continents, because, we do suffer from brain drain.
Mm. Lesego, what would you then say, based on the summit and the targets, are the current challenges that are faced by African youth that needs to be addressed by such summits?
I think access to information, employment, as well as access to opportunities. These types of summits will help us to be able to sit down and to address where it is that we see different opportunities that we'd like to explore, different sectors that we'd like to pioneer or invest in. But I think most importantly, it's also a good space for direct testimonies and case studies from the youth. There's so many platforms that are for the youth, but not really representative of the youth because they're very assumption-based. So this platform is with the youth leading, being a part of it, and disseminating according to what it is that we recommend and feel is rightful for us. So like I was saying, the biggest things really and the biggest worries are access to information, which will inform us what types of resources we have, which will also inform us what opportunities we can create or what opportunities are there and can be resurrected or whatever the case is. So I think just some focus incubations with the youth will really, really help to address the issue of, okay, information is an issue. What type of information is the youth actually looking to access? And not necessarily assuming what it is that needs to be given to us, because 51% unemployment rate for youth.
And I'm looking at this and trying to understand the issue of challenges and bringing you back into the conversation, Sophie. Do young people then have the capacity, the know-how to deal with this sort of issues and resolve those challenges? Are there enough platforms for young people to take matters into your own hands, as it were?
I think as trends evolve, we as young people need to stop just being, the trend, the quota, but actually take those leadership positions. Especially in countries like South Africa, I'd say there are way more platforms. From where I'm from in the DRC, where youth are still to a large extent seen and not heard. So I think there are platforms, but whether or not we are leaders in or on those platforms is up for debate. But do we have the capacity to be leaders, to take action, and to take on, the big issues like climate change and migration and corruption, etc.? Absolutely.
But then, with that said, do you think the powers that be then take young people serious? Is it a question where governments, leaders, corporates would have faith in youth dealing with these problems and coming up with solutions to these challenges that you spoke about?
I think yes and no. It depends where, why, and what. For example, there are organizations that take young leaders seriously and put them in leadership positions. We do find that it's mostly in partnerships more than having a young person lead completely. So I think it's a very tough question, because sometimes, as youth, we just labeled as, radical and too woke and uncompromising. But yeah, I think youth have always been able to, to lead. Like, I always use Patrice Lumumba as an example. When he died, he was in his early 30s. That means he started as a youth. And we can say he died as a youth. So we've always had the capacity. We just haven't had, the platform and that extra push.
Lesego, on the same point, I mean, do you feel that, when we are just talking about the sixth administration of South Africa, the sixth parliament, and people are saying that we don't see too many young faces. Are the youth ready to take matters into their own hands?
I think it's such an injustice to even think that they're not, considering that there's 25 years of new youth that was produced in terms of, let's say, just matriculants going into tertiary studies. And for South Africa specifically, to not be ready to accommodate the youth, whether in parliament, whether in advocacy platforms, whether in policy reform platforms, I think is reflective of a political glitch that's taking place in African politics, where older leaders just don't seem to understand the potential of either mentoring, guiding, or investing in the youth, which is such a huge injustice to, firstly, democracies that we build, because who is going to run this democracy? I was looking at parliamentary right now. A lot of our leaders, you look at them and you're like, you should be in pensions, because there are so many. Because really, if we're going to talk about unemployment, but the highest power, there is no reflection in the face of the country of youth. It's just like, we can't only have, and not to be political or picking on parties, but umbuyiseni, to say, oh, there's a young person that is there in the forefront, and not even that young. There's 21-year-old, 25-year-old, 26, 7-year-old politicians that should be leading, but not given the platform, because adults have this perception that there's respect in work or movements, and it does injustice.
At 23 minutes past 5, this is Power Up on Power 98.7 in conversation with Lesego Musikare and Sophie Kanza. Now, Sophie, from your side, I mean, and I want us to touch on the issue of Afrophobia. How is it viewed amongst the youth of the continent, Afrophobia?
Well, traveling the continent, you find that youth from, non-Southern African countries are in complete shock. They are disgusted. I think it's for a lot of people, it's inconceivable. On South African shores, there's still a lot of people that are in denial. There's still a lot of people believe that it doesn't exist and that it's made up or exaggerated. But yeah, so that's what makes the work that we do so important, because it does exist. It's rife. It's woven into the DNA of a lot of South Africans, and it needs to be spoken about and it needs to be rooted out.
Lesego, your take on that?
You know, when it comes to xenophobia, especially, I think that it's such a Africanism and African pride issue where it's so psychological and it's so deep that I think the same way that we say hate begets hate and hurt begets hurt, I think that it's very hard when you are in a world that does not love you, that is against you, and that is built to almost disorientate and displace you as a Black person. Everything that we see and we experience except nature is foreign to our identity. And so it's so hard to be able to then appreciate other people that look like us, first and foremost. And I think especially with South Africa, the conversation is that there's so much post-traumatic stress history when it comes to Africans and African countries, because I think for us to hate people that look like us, but to embrace Chinese people, to embrace white people, to embrace
colonization in
you know what I mean?
These are the fruits
I think
of colonization.
For me, yes, precisely. And we're on Power FM and it's cool. Colonization and westernization did its job, because what it's done is it's stripped us of our African pride. It's something Hugh Masekela used to talk about all the time. It's something Thandiswa Mazwai talks about. It's something Julius Malema talks about. Ndaba Mandela talked about it about 2 weeks ago on Instagram as well. So it's just really, really tough because no one is even going to give you that information. If you're not equipped with the information that, hey, this is the story, then it's different. My own mother, was xenophobic at some point, and I had to sit down and make her understand that it's a reflection of hate on yourself, to hate on someone that is just like you, that does more than you, but to worship somebody that you don't know.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to squeeze in just one quick call and we'll wrap up the conversation. Aubrey, good morning.
Morning, how are you?
Good, and you?
Yeah, no, young people have a lot of energy, but the issues at hand is that they are less skilled. I mean, if you read the Statistics SA report, it says today's youth in South Africa are less skilled than their parents. I mean, we should be focusing on that because, I mean, you can talk, they're raising relevant issues, but the problem is that if you look at, we can talk about the old liberation movement in South Africa. The reason why they don't have, especially the ANC, the ruling party, there's no, Cyril Ramaphosa, when he chooses his cabinet, where is the youth? Because there's no youth there. They don't have the people because they left with the EFF. That's the first point. Number two, the issue of skills. I don't think if you look at, I look at my own relatives, the young people. In my time, I had less information than they have today, but I was able to study because I was determined. But if you look at them today, my cousins are studying photography, all those things that I don't think we need to develop this country. We need the necessary skills. If you look at the Afrikaners, I always make this point. In 1948, when they took power, they said, how do they take their people out of poverty? They said, no, we must industrialize. They built your smelters, your ISCO, Fosco, all those institutions. And then they encouraged Afrikaners to go to FET colleges, to technical,
and get them the education. Aubrey, unfortunately, I'm out of time, but I got your point, Aubrey, in Roodepoort. As we wrap up, let me start with you, Lesego, in 30 seconds. As we look ahead to the Youth Summit, how would you wrap it up for us?
You know what? I really, really encourage youth and adults to come into the space and to engage, but not just to engage, but to see what it is that they would want to contribute towards the society. Aubrey's right. It's so, so important for us to be able to work as a community, but to be able to address the relevant issues and to be honest in order to move forward about what it is that we need to move forward. So places like Breaking Down Border are so important in order for one to equip themselves with the right information, resources, and partners.
Okay, Sophie, your closing comments?
I also encourage anyone who, can make it to come through and if they can't participate, at least to observe. The summit is very inclusive. There's, the main venue, and then there's also breakaway venues where people who can't attend at the main venue can, come and still be part of the conversation. And I think that, everyone deserves to be heard, whether they are educated or not, and, in whichever language they feel comfortable speaking in. So it's truly an inclusive space where everyone matters.
Sophie Kanza and Lesego Musikare, thank you very much for coming through and spending time with us. Do check them out. The Breaking Down Borders Africa Youth Summit, Pan-Africanist annual conference for youth leaders from across the continent, will be hosted from the 22nd to the 24th of May under the theme Reclaim Africa.
You've been listening to a Power 98.7 podcast. For more podcasts, visit power987.co.za or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.